What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Hardwood Show here on the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel. It's Monday, January 22nd. We're talking this 7-game slate. Last game of the night left off on DraftKings. And we'll go game by game, breaking it all down. You guys know the drill. Got the usual crew today, AP, Mangone, I'm Draft Cheat. And it's good to be back in the NBA streets after a very, very fun NFL weekend. I see my guy Mangone has joined the winning team. He's in the box with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, so that's good to see. And you know what, AP, you're the number one Chiefs fan here. I consider myself a Chiefs fan as well. But guess what? I logged into to the Discord over at Run Pure Sports already, bright and early in the morning. People hating on the Chiefs. The Chiefs got lucky. It's hero ball. They're going to lose to the Ravens. We should rename the company Chiefs Hater Sports. I think that'd be more apt. AP, I know you're celebrating today after the big win. How you doing on this Monday?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And the guy you're talking about is Bobby Boom. I mean, Bobby Boom it's relentless. It's every single day. I mean, I was close to just giving up, being like, all right, let's have this team lose so this dude will shut up, because it is constant and relentless, and he never stops, and there's always an excuse, and it's never a legit win. And Kermit is this, that, whatever, but the better team won. And look, like, I don't think you can, like, what was he saying, wide right? That was the big excuse, so the kicker lost it for him this time. But it's part of the game. I thought the game was so one, I was listening to it on the radio. Whoever was calling the game, SXM, was phenomenal. And then I had a DVR, got home at 10:30, 11. Then I watched it. So got to bed around 1:30. I'm an old man, so definitely feeling it today, but it was well worth it to watch it. And I thought it was a great game. I mean, it was so good. You got to feel for the Bills Mafia, but hey, they got bested. They've ran into an absolute freight train in Patrick Mahomes, who, he runs pure, but I think it was our own Big T that said creates his own luck, and that's what the best do. And I mean, Snyder's going to get absolutely pounded and punished this week. He'll learn. He'll definitely learn. I'm right back on the Chiefs. Look, I've already seen Discord. I saw the bets chat. I've seen everything. It's like 90% Ravens, and it's like the same story again. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? This guy is incredible. We see it over and over and over. You're going to give him points? You're going to give Patrick Mahomes points again against the Ravens? I think Kansas City matches up much better against the Ravens too. So I digress. It's going to be a fun week. Can't wait for this weekend. I think Kansas City gets back to the Super Bowl, and I think they go back to back. I think they're the best team out of the four that are left. And I honestly, and I say this very, very confident, I don't think it's close.
I get why the Ravens are favored, currently 3-point favorites, I believe, over the Chiefs. I'll be on the Chiefs side for sure. I get that line, Mangone. The one that really surprised me, you can look at the future Super Bowl lines, and the Niners are favored by 3 over the Chiefs in that hypothetical matchup. That one makes no sense to me. And on a neutral field, Brock Purdy versus Patrick Mahomes, I really, really don't get that line. But your thoughts on the football, Mangone, and of course we'll get into the NBA here in a second. But go ahead, Travis.
To be fair, I get that Niners line. I mean, one thing just to call out, like, Kansas City has not been that impressive this season. They just haven't. But dude, they were impressive yesterday. Like, if you and the whole Pat Mahomes and the refs crap, dude, there was one play that people are pointing to, and I don't know, it was a pass interference, right? Can we be realistic there? What he did was impeding the progress of the receiver. So I was impressed with the win. I'm not on the bandwagon here, and I do think the Ravens deserve the respect of being the favorite this week. Now, Pat Mahomes, you could argue that the dude's just so good. Whenever he's getting points, just bet that, right? For the next 10 years, whenever he's getting points, just bet Pat Mahomes when he's getting points, and he'll likely win the majority of the time, right? That's a perfectly good argument. It's like saying, hey, Marvin Bagley chalk, let's not play it, DC, right?
No, I was punished by Marvin Bagley.
You did get punished by it, but point being is there's some spots where you can just argue they're probably going to win most of the time throughout history. And that's a spot that's probably going to win most of the time throughout history. And to be fair, on the other side, I thought the Buffalo Bills were impressive too. But at the end of the day, it was, hey, who can make a play late? And Josh Allen missed the throw. Like, he missed that throw.
Yeah.
It just didn't matter. Doesn't matter that he was hit a little bit by a defensive lineman that was pushing an offensive lineman into him. You got to make that throw if you're a top quarterback. And Jacob loves the background. Jacob, I'm not here supporting the Chiefs. I'm here supporting my friends who are the Chief fans, right? So I'm here doing that for the week or day. Who knows how long? Who knows? Maybe I'll hop on the show and I'll have Snyder and his soldiers in the background and Lamar Jackson on AP tomorrow. You never know. But I'm excited. I'm excited to watch these games, right? We have two legit games. The Lions are like a lovable underdog. The Niners have clearly been like a kind of fan favorite, it feels like, that people are rooting on. And of course, we have the Purdy narrative, which is a lot of fun of, does Purdy suck or is Purdy good? I know DC is on the Purdy sucks bandwagon. And we got Lamar versus Mahomes. I mean, just two juggernauts going back and forth. So it's going to be a really, really fun weekend coming up. I can't wait. I do have a futures ticket on the Niners, so I guess I have some rooting interest there. But from like a fan perspective of just like the NFL, it's hard to not like this coming up weekend. Like, you don't have some dust ball team. Like, for instance, like, listen, the Bucks they were a fun story, but do we want the Bucks playing the Niners? No, we didn't want the Bucks playing the Niners. We didn't want to watch Baker Mayfield against that defense. This is a way more fun game, and it should be a good time. Yeah,
another nice thing is most of the teams are pretty much healthy, at least kind of the offensive stars. All four quarterbacks are good to go. Debo, I guess, would be the one injury, but I even think he's got a chance to come back and play next week. So it should be a very, very fun NFL weekend, but we got to wait a week. And in the meantime, we'll be grinding in the NBA streets, starting with tonight. First game we'll talk about, San Antonio Spurs and the Philadelphia 76ers. Big spread in this one. Philly favored by 14 over San Antonio. Missing for Philadelphia will be DeAnthony Melton, Marcus Morris, Patrick Beverley is questionable. And then for the Spurs, should be mostly fully healthy. Zach Collins and Dominic Barlow are questionable to play in this one. But yeah, big spread here. Philly by 14, 236 total AP. Obviously some blowout risk here, but I am looking forward to watching Embiid against Wembanyama. I think that's just a really, really fun kind of stylistic matchup. Don't know what to think about it necessarily for a DFS perspective, but your thoughts here, Philadelphia, San Antonio to kick off the slate.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. You know, unfortunately, Embiid still held to what, like 26, 27 minutes. I think that's where I have his minutes projection at. Wemby. Yeah, not Embiid. Yeah. I'm curious, like when you think about Embiid's game, that little kind of mid-range game he has with his jumper that's just so elite, and like especially for a big man. I want, like, when you think about the size of the two guys and just how big they are, obviously Embiid will have an advantage, just kind of bodying him up. But lengthwise, I mean, Wemby, I wonder if that mid-range, I wonder if it impacts Embiid a little bit. So I'm with you. I'm excited to watch this matchup. I do think if it does impact him a little bit, I would have some concerns. Like, I have Embiid as kind of an elite tournament play, someone I'm considering. I want to prioritize some news later on in the slate before like completely going too heavily on him. But I wonder if it's like a Tobias Harris or even a Tyrese Maxey that gets there if Embiid is the guy kind of struggling with that mid-range game against the length of Wembanyama. So I don't love this game. There's some elite spots in the 7:30 and the 8 Eastern window, and then we have we have some studs to consider too later on in the slate. So I don't want to get overweight on this game because these Spurs games can be so frustrating, especially on the Spurs side. The rotation sucks. We like targeting them with opposing players, but the risk is, like, if Philly blows them out, I mean, we could get the scrubs in there late too. So I'm really torn. Curious to see where you guys are at on this one. I'm not prioritizing anyone, but I do think Embiid in this matchup is somewhat interesting. I don't know how much I'm going to get of him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't have a ton from this game. It would be really Embiid and Wembanyama that I would consider playing. I do think there's a pretty good chance Wembanyama is going to get in foul trouble early in this game. Like, just knowing Embiid and how well he's playing, I bet he kind of forgoes that mid-range game that he's shown and probably just goes right at Wembanyama, right? I would imagine that's like, I bet the first possession of the game is going to be Embiid trying to drive to the basket and score on Wemby. So it'll be fun to watch, Mangone, but DFS-wise, I don't know if I'm going to get there. What are your thoughts here, Philadelphia and San Antonio?
Well, to be fair, like once you run everything, like there's reasons why you might get to Embiid, right? And the reason why is, well, I have all the salary cap in the world, right? We have value today. We have a lot of it. So that's the argument for why you might get there. Mike Conley missing opens up some value against Charlotte with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Kyle Anderson. You're also waiting on Ant Edwards, right? We didn't get that. I didn't miss that over the past couple hours, right? But am I right about that? Yeah, he's still
questionable. Yep.
But if he sits, like, right, it's just going to open up the floodgates for even more Timberwolves, right, and make them even stronger values. So that is the reason why Embiid is more in the conversation for me today, because you just have a stars and scrubs kind of build. We also have Luka, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, not excited about a lot of other plays in this game. I mean, at the end of the day, the Spurs are just like, they're not a team we like to play. Like, for instance, DC, if you are hopping on a show and you know it's a Spurs slate, you're like, shit, like, I don't want to deal with this. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, it's nice to not worry about the Spurs. Like, if the Spurs, like, were the 10 o'clock game or 11 o'clock game, I'd be happy that it's left off the slate. Like, whenever the Spurs are on that West Coast swing, I'm perfectly fine with it. We don't need to deal with those games. I am upset that they left off the Hawks and Kings today. That is a very fun game, but that's a whole other conversation. I'm not playing the Spurs. I just don't think it's necessary. And on the Sixers, it's really only Embiid. And again, it's because I just have the salary to, right? There's going to be some opportunity and some value on this slate that are super important.
Yeah, makes sense. Don't want to lock into too much early on. We talk about that a lot, especially kind of, just middling plays, which I think the Spurs Philly game has a lot of. Kind of the same thing, I think, for this Cleveland-Orlando game that we'll talk about next. Cleveland favored by 2.5 here. Very low total, sitting at 215. Out for Orlando are Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris, Jonathan Isaac. They did get Franz Wagner back last game. He's going to be in there. And then out for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Garland, Ty Jerome remain out. And then the biggest piece of news that we're waiting here on this game is Karis LeVert is questionable. Obviously has a very big role in that team. So if he were to miss, certainly some guys on Cleveland would get a bump AP. Let's go back to you, Cleveland, Orlando. What do you see here?
Yeah, really low total. I mean, we've been talking about it for a long time now. Orlando, a team that, unlike a lot of NBA teams out there, they like to play in the half court. They don't like to play in transition. They like to play defense, and I think that suits their style too. With Franz and with Franz back, now they can go back to that rotation where they're focused on those two, one of Franz or Paolo on the court typically at all times, and they really build this rotation around them. The one other interesting thing is Wendell Carter Jr. Back in the starting lineup has been playing, I think, 30-plus minutes, 26 and 34 in the last game against Miami. I think he's interesting, but honestly, I'm starting to think this is the wrong slate. So I had him tagged as a fine play, but really, when you look at the other center options and the kind of positional flexibility that you get with the Jaren Jacksons, the Karl Anthony Towns, Naz Reid, I think it's going to be a really good play. And some of these guys later on, and then also Embiid, like we just talked about. Do we really want like a 35 from Wendell Carter Jr. on this slate? Like I don't know if that's going to be enough, if that makes sense. I mean, normally on a slate, a 35 piece from a guy who's 5.4K, I would want, but I think some of these other plays, like even Naz Reid, we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, could definitely outscore what Wendell Carter Jr. could do here. And then the Magic, obviously a team we don't really like to attack too. Donovan Mitchell, I mean, with all the injuries that the Cavs have had, I mean, his usage has been insane. But these other pieces on this team have stepped up. And we saw it last game against the Hawks. I mean, Donnie Mitch really didn't have to do very much. When guys like Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro, and Max Strus, who got hurt in that first quarter, I think, and led to some extra run for Sam Merrill off the bench. These guys are all playing really well. They're playing good team ball. I expect this game to be a defensive-minded battle. So I'm going to be off of it. I will say Jared Allen, I think, is one guy in play. Like if you just think about playing this game in not in transition, but in the half court, maybe more opportunities for rebounds. I like him. I like his double-double upside in this spot against the Magic. But, again, not a game I want too much exposure to.
Yeah, that all makes sense to me. I'm pretty much off this game as well. I don't know. I just never really play Wendell Carter Jr. Don't really trust the minutes. And don't like this matchup either against Jared Allen, the individual matchup at least. So I'm mostly off it. What about you, Mangone? You see anything in Cleveland, Orlando that you like?
Yeah, I did luck box into playing Wendell Carter Jr. the other day against the Sixers, so that was fun. But yeah, I think at 5'4", he's still not the worst play. But to be fair, like things have to go his way, right? And I don't mind attacking Jared Allen that much. So yeah, I don't think it's the craziest play. The only thing that you could argue on this slate is, I don't know, I have a lot of value, right? And I don't know if I need to get there. I think if it was a slate that I was struggling for a little bit more value, it would make some sense. So not super excited about like loading up on Magic today in this spot. Cleveland, I know AP has talked up Donnie Mitchell and how good he's been. And he has shown some nice ceiling performances at 9-9. And if we have value, you can make the case that Donovan Mitchell could be a spend up that you could get to. But again, it's against the Magic, right? This isn't like one of the most glamorous games on this slate. I don't think I'm going to be super excited about this game overall. Yeah, I don't know if I really want to get there, DC. I mean, again, Wendell Carter at 5'4", that's fine, but I think that's really it for this game personally.
Yeah, 3 for 3 on kind of fading these first couple games. I think the next one, the final game here in the 7 Eastern time window, is the best of the three, Milwaukee and Detroit. High total in this one, obviously, sitting at 247. Cade Cunningham doubtful. Might be back next game, but not expected to be in there tonight. Monty Morris also doubtful. Isaiah Stewart questionable. And it looks like the Bucks should be fully healthy for this game. These two teams just played, 2 days ago on Saturday. That game ended 141-135. And yeah, I think we'll see another fast-paced game here. I think Giannis AP is a really good spend, and you can certainly afford one of the true studs today if you want to play him. You don't have to, but you certainly can. I think Giannis firmly in play. And I really like what I've seen from Jaden Ivey recently, stepping up his game without Cade Cunningham in there. He's been good, like 4, 5, 6 games in a row, including the last one against the Bucks. So yeah, 6,700 for Ivy is certainly interesting to me. And yeah, Giannis on the other side is the guy that I like the best. What are your thoughts here, AP, Milwaukee, and Detroit?
Yeah, I mean, this game, it was Glock and I were talking about it. And because we've been tracking Dame ever since he had that big game, and we've been looking for spots to play him. And of course, he found himself absolutely nuking on a slate that was on an island. So wasn't a main slate. Couldn't get really any exposure to Dame Lillard outside of, I think, Showdown is what they had for that slate. This is the other spot that I'm with you on Jaden Ivey. I think he's a great play here. When you look at, so a couple things. One, the Bucks have been a little bit better defensively, except for against opposing backcourts. So they've really tightened things up, kind of in the interior. But still, that brings a guy like Jaden Ivey back firmly into play. And then it was last game, I believe it was Alec Burks, who just absolutely smashed off the bench. Yep. I was pulling up the rotation. I mean, look, they started Kevin Knox and Boyan. And Kevin Knox sucks, man. The guy is not good, and Killian Hayes is not good either. And so when you think of ball handlers, it's Jaden Ivey and then Alec Burks. If we think Alec Burks gets that same run, I do think he's somewhat intriguing. But the Bucks side attacking the Pistons, just not good defensively right now. But they've been able to hang in some of these games, which makes it far more interesting DFS wise. That's why the Wizard slates always. They always get me. I'm always intrigued because they have so much offensive firepower, but they're just so bad defensively. And then they have a defensive-minded coach that just screws everything up for me and how I think the game should go. And that's why I've gotten punished targeting those games a lot of times this season. But, in my mind on paper, the reason behind it is pretty sound. And that really applies for the spot for the Bucks tonight. I think just with people prioritizing the news, maybe Dame goes a little bit overlooked. I like Giannis. I had Giannis as a top stud option tonight. I think he smashes. But man, I'm really interested in potentially going back to Dame too. I've been impressed with what I've been seeing from him. Should be an easy win again, but I think the Pistons are trying. They're playing tougher in these games, which has created a much more favorable fantasy environment. So for me, it's the studs on the Bucks side. It's Dame Lillard, Giannis, kind of the spend up options, and then Jaden Ivey on the other side. And I think in MME formats, Alec Burks, I'm okay chasing that. The price tag does seem high. If we believe the rotation in this matchup, I think he can get it done. But I do think it's a risky play.
Yeah, I mean, I like Ivy, and I like the Burks call too. Like you said, Detroit's just kind of missing scores, right? Like Killian Hayes doesn't shoot at all. Their big men outside of Jalen Duren don't do a whole lot. Oscar Thompson can't shoot. Knox sucks. And so you see with Alec Burks, if you look back at his minutes, like they're like perfectly correlated to when he's shooting well. Like if his shot's falling, if his three's falling, they let him play because why not? They need the scoring. So yeah, I think there's a lot of volatility in a guy like Alec Burks, but the fact is, Mangone scored 40 plus in 2 of the last 3 games. It's hard to find that type of realistic upside at that price point. So I think he's interesting. Ivy remains my favorite play in this game, though. Your thoughts, Mangone, on Detroit and Milwaukee?
Yeah, Alec Burks has the similarities to Wendell Carter Jr., right? Where it's a guy off the bench, has massive upside when you know he's going to get the minutes. You can argue this is one of those spots where he could earn the minutes throughout the game, or if things are going his way, yeah, it's a pretty good spot for him, right? So ownership's going to be important on him. 5.4K. And we like targeting the Bucks, right? With guards, right? Guards specifically have done really well. So Alec Burks is in that conversation. Jaden Ivey, 6.7K. I think he has to be in that conversation too. He's been playing pretty well. But understand too, Jaden Ivey has downside, right? He could just not fill it up and just have a bad game out of nowhere. So the one thing too, though, that's at least encouraging about Detroit that we should mention is in the past with Detroit, there's been some frustrations with the minutes. They've secured the minutes up a little bit more, right? So that's at least been good. Also, I think Duren is not a bad play. The only worry that I have with Duren is, the minutes are good, but if he gets in foul trouble, which is certainly possible in this matchup, that has me slightly concerned at 6'8". Like if I had a utility spot and it was Jalen Duren or Jaden Ivey, I'll admit I'd probably take Jaden Ivey over Jalen Duren because of that alone and just the favorable matchup for someone like Ivey. So obviously, if Cade Cunningham is randomly ruled in, this would change things. So keep that in mind. We assume he's going to be out, though. He is doubtful right now, so keep that in mind. Giannis, I know he's probable. He's a contrarian spend with a lot of value that you can make a case for that no one's going to get to. But other than that, I'm not really that excited about any of these Milwaukee options. Like in MME formats, could you make a case Chris Middleton at 7.4 could be on the winner against the Detroit Pistons? Yes, I think you can make an argument for it, but is he a priority play? Is he someone that I'm jamming onto my teams? No, more of a last guy in that you could make a case for. But again, this is a pretty good slate with a lot of good options coming up in these next games that have some really good value plays.
For sure. That's the 3 early games. We'll move on to the next window of games. Just one game in the 7:30 Eastern time window. It is Memphis and Toronto. I think a really good game for DFS here. Toronto favored by 7, 225 total. Obviously, Toronto just they're like a completely new team than they were a few weeks ago. Traded Siakam, traded Anunoby. Jakob Poeltl's hurt, and so it's just it's kind of a whole new team, and it kind of seems like AP that they've kind of got like a true big 3, if you want to call it that, to lean on. Quickly, Barnes and Barrett do, especially with Poeltl out, do almost everything for this team. It's a good matchup against Memphis. I like these Toronto guys. I think the price on all 3 of those guys is fair. They all 3 can kind of do a little bit of everything, right? Pass the ball, they can assist each other. So I think you can play them together. So I'm very much in on Toronto tonight. And then, Memphis is so banged up, missing obviously Morant, Smart, Derrick Rose, Desmond Bane. Stephen, the list goes on and on for Memphis, that they've got some good plays on their side too. It's actually been Luke Kennard, who is playing the closest thing to a point guard role for Memphis, which is a little bit weird. Obviously not a very good team. Good spot for Toronto. What do you like your AP, Memphis and Toronto?
Yeah, a few points just to add on to what you said. I mean, the Raptors are like a new team. And when you think about defense, especially in the NBA, good defensive teams, it's all chemistry, it's all communication. And when you bring these players together, you don't typically get that right away unless they're a bunch of vets. And that's not what we have here. So in the short term, I know the sample is really small, but the Raptors have definitely taken a hit defensively. We saw that against the Bulls. The Bulls' big three all had monster games. Kobe White, Vucevic, DeRozan smashed. In the Knicks, in this last game, Jalen Brunson 61 piece, Julius Randle 56. The matchup I think here on both sides is pretty intriguing. I think Jaren Jackson, the usage has been insane. Him and these kind of younger players. I mean, if you just look at it, 35%, 46%, 31%, 35%, last 4 games. I mean, that's insane usage. That means when they're on the offensive end of the court, the ball is flowing through him, giving him more opportunities, and then add in, his rebounds, steals, and blocks as long as he stays out of foul trouble. I think Jaren Jackson, definitely a core play that I want to build around tonight. I think he could, if this game stays close, which I see it staying close, I think could be a massive number, or he could put up a massive number. The news that we got to keep an eye on, Xavier Tillman. So we saw Santi Aldama start in place for him with Jaren Jackson, Vince Williams, Conchar, and Luke Kennard. So if Tillman's out, Santi would assume, would start again. David Roddy with the 30 minutes off the bench, I see that kind of continuing as well. So we should get a tight rotation on the Grizzlies side. I think a lot of these players are very intriguing, very viable in DFS formats. My favorite, Jaren Jackson on the Memphis side, Santi Aldama if Tillman sits. And I kind of want to take a shot at Zaire Williams off the bench, 3,800. No one's going to play him. He's been ice cold, like ice cold, but the opportunity is there. Just last 4 games, 2 of 8, 1 of 6, 1 of 5, 2 of 9. I think Zaire Williams, a guy that has some talent. He has to be sub 1% on tonight. I'm going to take a few shots on him in MME formats. And what I mean by that is like 5 to 7%. I don't think you need a lot. But I think he's somewhat intriguing. Just understand the risk with that type of play. And then, I'm with you on the other side, on the Raptors side, RJ Barrett. The positional flexibility that you get with him too, playing him at the shooting guard, small forward spot. And I think his price is somewhat, he's somewhat underpriced at 6,900. The guy I'm fading, I'm curious to see what you guys think. Just the news I've read and heard, I don't think Bruce Brown wants to stay on this team. We all know where Bruce Brown wants to go. I'm going to be fading or underweight on Bruce Brown at 5,100. I'm not really trusting the spot here with him.
I didn't see that news, but I'm out on Bruce.
I mean, maybe it's not news. Maybe I just read something. It could be way wrong. I mean, I'm going on like 4 hours of sleep, so who knows what I was reading? Maybe I dreamt it up. Who knows?
Just making shit up over there.
Bruce Brown said he wanted to go play for the Knicks. He said, "I would love to play for Tom Thibodeau." Basically,
yeah.
Said,
there we go.
He said, "I know how to do everything. Like I'm a dog. Tibbs would love me or something." And honestly, Bruce Brown seems like a Thibodeau guy. So.
Oh, look who we got. Look who we got in the chat. Mr. Mitch Snyder. Hit the like, everyone. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you love to see it. Snyder about to take a beat down on Sunday. But we do appreciate you joining the show, Snyder. So, hit the like, hit the subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for doing my job. Do you think we'll get a tweet from Snyder like Saturday night or Sunday morning? Something about 8, put the respect on his name, and AP and DC will be tagged in it, kind of like he did with Big T and JSU. I think it's coming. Definitely going to be something like that. But the Soldiers are going down this week in Snyder. They're not going to have a good time against the Chiefs. We did just get some news. It looks like Beverly and Spring are both out for Philadelphia, which does change things a little bit because they start to get pretty thin in the backcourt. We can maybe revisit that toward the end of the show, but definitely news Worth mentioning there. Let's go to you, man. Go Memphis and Toronto.
Yeah, I do want to clarify something. Snyder sent one of those tweets out, right? That like was just out of left field, and he goes, "Inject this game into my veins," right? And of course, like the stage is going on, right? It's a great game, and Snyder has to throw in there. Still not worried about either one of these teams from a Raven fan's perspective. And then he throws in there, Snyder, you throw in LJ will hang 40 on this Bills defense. You still feel the same, Snyder? I mean, it's not the Bills anymore; it's the Kansas City Chiefs. So. I can't wait.
Also, we'll leave Snyder alone after this. But Snyder, you're a lifelong Ravens fan. You are on the record of not wanting them to re-sign Lamar Jackson. You said they couldn't win with him, and now you're taunting me for bandwagon hopping. No, get out of here, Snyder. Okay, go ahead, man. Go with basketball.
And again, I'm not. Even though I have Kelsey and Taylor behind me, I am not on the Chiefs bandwagon. I'm excited just for the game. I haven't picked a horse yet, but I'm just wanted to get on you, Snyder. You thought the Bills were going to win that game. But, anyways, we are talking about what, DC? We're on the Memphis and Toronto game, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, which, hey, that's an exciting game from a DFS perspective. Obviously, the Memphis side still has a lot of different pieces that we got to discuss here. Jaren Jackson Jr. at 7'9". I mean, he just has like that 50, 60-point upside, even in this kind of more difficult matchup. So I like Jaren Jackson Jr.'s upside at the price. I think he's worth mentioning. What Vince Williams Jr. has been doing has been awesome. Now you can make the case that 6'2" is expensive, but to be fair, like Vince Williams Jr. has a big ceiling, right? He can have 40-point games. So I think Vince Williams Jr. is someone that you got to make a case for, but you have to understand that floor could be low too. So I think it's a very wide range of outcomes for someone like Vince Williams Jr. I don't mind Luke Kennard and his role at 5'4". I still think there is some upside there that people are missing. And I think he's like not a bad like plug and play, just like last guy in. So I don't mind him. We should talk about some of these other options because Xavier Tillman, he's questionable. Xavier Tillman somehow misses. I assume you'll see the Jaren Jackson Jr. Santi Aldama front court again. And like that would obviously be really enticing and make Santi Aldama an even better play at 5K. So he's someone I'm going to be looking at. It is interesting to see Gigi Jackson was like super owned the other day, and now he's not owned, right? And you can make a case that there are some other guys that are back, but if a Xavier Tillman sat, why wouldn't we consider a Gigi Jackson if we considered him the other day, right? I thought that was something just worth mentioning. The guy's going to have literally zero ownership. So John Conchar is another guy that's popping a little bit. You know, if you look at any type of projection, he'll pop. I think there's more risk to him, but he is only 3.9K. John Conchar is fine, but he's not just his like priority play. I think a lot of these Memphis plays that we discussed, it's more of these like mid-tier guys and like the guys up top or the guys down low. Toronto is a really interesting spot to discuss because I think, hey, Memphis is really shorthanded right now, right? Memphis is struggling a ton. And with Memphis struggling a ton right now, I think that a lot of these Raptors could absolutely crush. Scotty Barnes at 8.2K. I think RJ Barrett at 6'9 is worth going back to with the usage he's seeing. Emmanuel Quickly at 6'8. He got a price decrease, and he's been good in pretty much every single game he's played in, except that Chicago Bulls game. And I watched that Chicago's Bull game pretty closely, and that's because I did play Emmanuel Quickly at lower ownership. And let me tell you, Emmanuel Quickly, he was dealing with Alex Caruso a little bit, right? And Alex Caruso, you got to give him respect at times. And I'll just kind of give that a pass. I think the Emmanuel Quickly role is still really good at 6'8". I definitely want to go back to the well. Bruce Brown, I'm not going to touch him. I don't think he's worth it. Gary Trent Jr., he's fine, but he's not a priority. And I understand if he is chalkier, he could bust in this spot. And then I think Dennis Schroeder, I don't like him in this spot. I like some of these other options that we discussed. I'd go to Gary Trent Jr. over him, or I'd go up to some of these other ones between Barnes, Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickly. I think all three of those Raptors are really good plays today.
Yeah, I'll say this about the Raptors too. Look at the schedule. I mean, they played in New York, right? The Knicks were obviously up for that game with the trade and everything. Thibodeau, a defensive-minded coach. The Knicks were just locked in. Before that, they played a very defensive-minded, kind of slower-paced Chicago team. They blew out Miami. Like, it's been kind of a tough schedule, and this is a really good get-right spot. I'll say this too. Jaren Jackson Jr., especially if Tillman is out, because Toronto plays small too, right? They don't have Pirtle. So they're like playing Thad Young sometimes at the 5. That's a perfect spot for Memphis to match with Jackson Jr. at the 5, where maybe the rebound upside is even higher. So, yeah, I think a really fun game here. And this probably my favorite game stack, Memphis and Toronto, because if Memphis can keep this game close, I think you'll see close to 40 minutes from all the big three from Toronto, and then some value from Memphis has got to get there. They're all just too cheap if they play decently well for some of them not to come through. So really in on this Memphis-Toronto game. Next one we'll talk about, also a good game. It is the lone game in the 8 p.m. Eastern time window, Charlotte and Minnesota. Minnesota big favorites in this one, 12.5-point favorites at home, 220 total. Charlotte remains pretty banged up. They should get, LaMelo Ball going to play in this one, but their two centers, Mark Williams and Nick Richards, are both going to be out, which they've been starting like PJ Washington at the 5, who's playing the most minutes for them at the 5. I don't know if you can do that against Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, which leaves only Nick Mensa, or Nathan Mensa rather, who is pretty terrible, honestly. Man, AP, I think this is a smash spot for the Wolves big men, particularly Rudy Gobert. I think is just going to gobble up rebounds all game in this one. Charlotte is already like the second worst rebounding team in the league, and that's a season-long number, right? Where Williams and Richards play all the minutes at center, and now they're both out. So awesome spot for the Wolves. Obviously, should have mentioned Anthony Edwards, questionable. Mike Conley already ruled out. And listen, Edwards got the midday downgrade, right, with an illness. We're seeing a lot of players miss games in this type of scenario where they miss shoot around with the illness, and it seems like the teams tell them, stay home, right? Take the day off. Don't get the whole team sick. So I think there's a decent chance Edwards sits. They certainly don't need him to win this game. And if he's out, man, you can really load up the wagons on the Wolves. Talk to us, AP, Charlotte, Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, this game is going to be really nice, especially on the Wolves side. One that you need to prioritize. Everyone's going to be looking at the value pieces. Kyle Anderson, all really, really, really good plays. Naz Reid, like I talked about too, Karl Anthony Towns, all really, really good plays. But the guy you talked about seems to be the guy that always goes overlooked. I pivoted. I moved to him. I'm trying to think who it was against. I think it was against Detroit on last week. Yeah, he ended up playing 37 minutes, put up a 45 piece. But then it was the very next game against Memphis. He just beats up on these teams. He's so good at grabbing rebounds. I think this is going to be a good matchup, maybe for some steals and blocks too. Gobert, absolutely love him in this matchup. 7,400, too cheap. Don't forget about him. Bump up that projection. I feel like he's always under-owned.
How does he not smash outside of, I guess, maybe a blowout? But
I think he's like a guarantee. I think he's like a guarantee to get you like 44. I'll
take it.
A double, and then the upside on that. I think he could get you a 55 piece. And today on this slate at that position, 7,400. We're taking that all day. So I'm with you. I love Rudy Gobert. And again, I love Naz Reid. I love this big man rotation. And I'm a huge Naz Reid stan.
Awesome.
But I pulled up, while we're on this show, I pulled up Bobby's article. And I mean, he makes a good point. He has him at a large field tournament fade, and it's more of an ownership play. And the reason being with Towns and Gobert in there too, I 100% get it. And it leads me to believe that a lot of people are going to go the Naz Reid route, and they're going to jam in the Kyle Anderson, and Naz Reid, just play all the values. But Rudy Gobert, I think I'm with you. I think he absolutely smashes. Fantastic play tonight. I think you can play all the bigs here between Towns, Gobert, and Naz Reid, but don't play them all together. Maybe two max, I think, and it would be probably Naz Reid in one of them, and or maybe make it one max and pair them with the Kyle Andersons in the Naz. So. The Timberwolves definitely going to be a spot you want to prioritize, especially assuming LaMelo Ball plays. We all know what happens. LaMelo Ball pushes the pace. Their pace numbers are insane when he's off the court versus on. It's just so much more of an attractive environment when he's playing. And he's been playing sloppy too. And that's probably why a guy like who's a pretty good defender, can get some steals and blocks. It's probably why you're just going to have to lock him in tonight and move on. Like he has the stock upside in this matchup. I'm sure they'll put him on LaMelo Ball or Terry Rozier. So I love the Wolves side. My only comments on the Hornets, I always have LaMelo Ball as a tournament play. The guy just brings so much upside each and every slate, and I don't really care what the matchup is. So, and in the tougher matchups like we have tonight, he's almost always like never owned, and so he's not a guy that you have to get too overweight on a slate like this. I shouldn't say never owned. It really comes down to the slate. I don't see him getting a lot of ownership on this slate, and I think he's somewhat intriguing.
Yeah, a lot to digest there. It did take us a while. We kind of buried the lead on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is projected, going to be the highest owned player on this slate. I'm seeing some sites have him at 80% ownership. Last time I faded an 80% owned guy, Marvin Bagley dropped 40 points on my head, so I'm not going to shit on too much. We've only seen one game this year where Mike Conley has sat. This is just the second game that he's missed all year. In that game, they did start Alexander Walker. It did go to overtime. It was back on January 10th against the Celtics, but Walker played 40 minutes in that game. Kyle Anderson played 39 minutes. They're 3,500 and 3,700. I think they're great plays, even if Edwards is in. But if Edwards sits, I'm just not going to be able to avoid playing, I would think, at least 3 Wolves, maybe 4. And yeah, we might not get that news, obviously, with this game being a little bit later. So really fun game here, Mangone. Hoping to load up on the Wolves here. What about you? What are your thoughts on the Timberwolves? And then anything on the other side, the Charlotte side of the ball?
Yeah, I'm not a huge Charlotte guy. I don't think I will get to.
No, you don't want to play Charlotte tonight, I don't think.
I agree. I'm just letting the people know Charlotte. It's hard for me to ever play them. I don't think I'm playing them here. Minnesota, obviously one of the best spots on the slate, right? And especially when it comes to a value perspective. And if Ant Edwards sits, man, that opens up so much opportunity, right? It opens it up for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Opens it up for Kyle Anderson, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, Karl-Anthony Towns. All of these guys get a nice bump. I think if Ant sits, I think it's really nice for Kyle Anderson and Karl-Anthony Towns specific usage, right? I think their usage would go to the moon. And I still think Kyle Anderson's usage is not bad here, even with Conley out, right? They need another ball handler to come into the lineup. He's dirt cheap. It's just a really good spot for him. Naz Reid is fine right now, but I do think Naz Reid, if Ant's in, I still could see routes where it's not great for Naz Reid, right? I know he's cheap. I know it's a good matchup, but if he's going to have some ownership, I think if Ant's in, you could make cases that it's just not as great of a Naz Reid spot. Now, Nickeil Alexander-Walker is benefiting what? Mike Conley being out, because he is naturally going to gain those minutes. Now, he won't gain all this usage. Now, if Ant's out, yes, he will gain some usage, but it's a lot of good minutes being allocated to Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Kyle Anderson. Those two guys are the best values. I think Karl-Anthony Towns, if Ant is in, he's still fine, and Rudy Gobert, but they really get the bumps if Ant sits. That'll be a really nice opportunity for them, especially Karl-Anthony Towns at his spot. So yeah, overall, we're going to like these options. Obviously, the values we're going to like the most. I think it goes Kyle Anderson 1, Alexander Walker 2, Naz Reid 3 when it comes to values. And I would even argue Karl-Anthony Towns might like more than someone like Naz Reid. So yeah, I think overall it's a really good spot for Timberwolves. We have to like them, and don't feel the need for any Charlotte runbacks, please. We're playing the Timberwolves not because they're playing against Charlotte. That's part of the reason, but it's because Mike Conley's missing. The matchup's good, and there's a possibility that Ant Edwards could sit here.
Yeah, I don't think Naz Reid is a bad play at all, but I would advise people to exercise a little bit of caution. The biggest reason is he doesn't close games in blowouts, which is, I think people are kind of assuming that he would. I think they have enough bodies where if it gets to that point, he's not going to get any more minutes than he typically would. So yeah, he's still a fine play at 4,900. Obviously, the matchup is awesome, but Towns and Gobert are in there, and those are the two guys, obviously, that he splits minutes with. So yeah, I will be a little bit cautious with Naz Reid. I think I just prefer to play the two starters, Towns and Gobert, as the big men for Minnesota. So yeah, that's Charlotte, Minnesota. Obviously, a very important game there, especially if Edwards ends up sitting. Let's go to the 8:30 Eastern time window of games. We've got Boston and Dallas for the Mavericks. Seth Curry, Dante Exum are out. Looks like everybody else, or most everybody else, should be in there for Dallas. And then on the Boston side of the ball, Kristaps Porzingis going to miss this game. Obviously, a big piece of news there for Boston. Really, really high total in this one, sitting at 240. Boston favored by just 2.5, expected to be close. Should be a good game here, closely contested, and a lot of fantasy goodness. AP, talk to us, Boston and Dallas.
Yeah, so matchup-wise, we can definitely attack this Mavericks team with opposing backcourts. Derek White, he kind of had a stretch there where he was definitely underwhelming to what we're used to seeing. He's back, though. He's firmly back. Has had a really nice game against the Nuggets and then, against the Rockets last game. He's going to play big minutes here. Love the matchup, coming off a 43 and 44 piece DK point-wise. So 6,700 feels cheap. I mean, you got to love what DraftKings has done with pricing. I mean, we don't earlier this month, Derek White was 7.7K against the Thunder. I mean, that's just on this Boston team, he should never be priced that when they're all healthy, which they are relatively healthy here. It's just you can't play him, especially on a slate like this one. 6,700 is definitely a better price tag. You could say the same thing about Drew Holiday. Again, between the two, we've seen better offensive stats from Derek White. Drew Holiday, more of a defensive guy. And that's going to be the case tonight, too, against Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic. And Derek White, too, very, very good defender. This game is going to be a really fun one to watch. Derek White, ton of interest in him. And then Jason Tatum. Tatum, I always have as a tournament play. I just think the guy brings a lot of upside each and every matchup that he's in, and especially in this one tonight. So for me, it's Derek White and Jason Tatum. I'm going to mix and match those guys in. Really curious to do on what to do with Luka Doncic. It was interesting. The last time we had a slate where there was a lot of viable value that you just could it made it very easy to jam in multiple studs. And tonight we have a bunch of them. We have Giannis, we have Embiid, and both in great matchups. And we have Luka, who is 11-2. It's just a really cheap price tag. So don't forget about those stud and value lineups. They're pretty obvious on the slate, but again, I feel like they sometimes go overlooked. So if you're out there and if you're a hand builder, don't be afraid to put Luka in there and then put Embiid or put Giannis and then go over to the game we just talked about, the Timberwolves. Throw in Kyle Anderson. Throw in Nickeil Alexander-Walker and just see where the lineup takes you. Those type of builds on a slate like this one where we have loose pricing are really nice to give you a high floor, high ceiling combination there. So yeah, I think this game's going to be interesting. I'm not quite sure how much Luka I'm going to get to, or if I'm going to get to Luka. I respect this Boston team defensively. I think their backcourt is really good, but with the Mavericks at home, with a high total of 240 points, it would be a mistake to fade Luka. I think it would truly be a mistake to fade Luka at 11-2. So I'm definitely not fading. I'm just trying to debate, do I take a stand here? Do I go 45, 50%. I mean, and so that's going to be the biggest debate for me. All the secondary pieces, the Josh Greens, Derek Jones, even Grant Williams, #revenge. You can fade those guys. We have better value in the Minnesota game, in the Memphis game, Raptors, games that we talked about. I would not play the Josh Greens, the Derek Joneses, or the value pieces from this game. So, that's where I'm at here.
Yeah, agree with most of that. Mangone, your thoughts here, Boston and Dallas.
Yeah, I'm not dying to load up on this game, but I think there's good spots. Of course, I mentioned it earlier, right? The reason why we probably want to consider Luka today is, we have the value, right? Like Luka could be in the best matchup in the world, but if I had no value, you can make the argument Luka isn't worth it because it's hard for the combination of Luka and the crappy piece of value that you take to get there together. So good news is we have the value to play someone like Luka if we want to. One of the big debates I think a lot of people are going to have on this slate is, do I play Luka or do I play Embiid as my spend-up stud? I think that's going to be one of the bigger conversation points. And like AP said, try to build with both if you want. But I think it's a big conversation that people are going to have. If you do decide to do that and you play a Luka and Embiid, Well, good luck playing some of these good mid-tier options, right? Like you probably miss out on Vince Williams Jr. or Emmanuel Quickly. You probably miss out on a Jaren Jackson Jr. or a Scotty Barnes. But to be fair, that is how you build a unique build. So, yeah, that's how I kind of handle him. You can make the same argument with Kyrie. I know it's a little Kyrie revenge spot, but I'm good. I don't need to play Kyrie in this spot with Luka in. I think that on the Celtics side of the ball, there are some pretty interesting plays that you should consider. Two of them, I think, are Derek White and Jaylen Brown. I just think at their price tags, I think you have to consider them, right? Like Jaylen Brown is 8-1, and at that price, he's got that 40 to 50 point upside that he could get and do well. And so could Derek White at 6-7. I mean, Wiley kind of talked about it in our Discord with some of the members, right? Bobby Harry's on that committee. And some of these mid-tier guys, their prices are being dropped, right? And that's one of the options, like Derek White. He was at 6-1 the other day. Now he's at 6-7, but he's still at 6-7 for a reason, right? It's part of the algorithm. And I do think that at 6-7, Derek White has a ton of upside in this spot. So really like this spot for someone like Derek White. And I'm not going to completely ignore the Boston Celtics. But again, this is a spot where you pick and choose a couple guys. You're not loading the boat on this game. You're not going to have 60% on one of these guys in MME, but you are going to want to get some exposure to some of these options.
We got the hot take of the day from Mr. Javon Town. I see you in here a lot supporting the show. We appreciate you, but I can't get behind your take, Mr. Town. Grant Williams will outscore Tatum. I'll tell you what. If you're right, if your crystal ball comes through on that one, I'll personally buy you a 1-month membership to Run Beer Sports, Mr. Town.
I did see Mr. Town in there the other day asking for free memberships or something. So I don't know if Javon, you support us, but I don't know if you remember it. With a take like Grant Williams over Tatum, you might want to get in the Discord chat and soak in some of that information. But
well, if he's right, he'll get a month membership on DC. So we'll leave it at that with Mr. Javon Town. Let's go to the last game on this slate. It is Chicago and Phoenix. Phoenix favored by 5.5 at home here. 227 total. Teams mostly healthy. Phoenix, both of their shooting guards, Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon, are questionable. That would certainly open up some minutes, but they do have their big three healthy: Beal, Booker, Durant, which makes, I think, Phoenix pretty tough. And then Chicago actually playing some decent ball. They do have everybody healthy right now, though, which, obviously only one basketball. But, yeah, most of the guys are kind of getting the job done anyway. Your thoughts here, AP, Chicago and Phoenix?
Yeah, I like attacking this Suns team with opposing power forwards and Kevin Durant playing some good basketball now. I mid-show I pulled up Bobby's article, and he has him as a shipper. So, again, I can't give that whole article away, but Bobby, very, very sharp guy. And I'll be honest, when I did my first look through of this slate, I'm like, oh, the big three for the Suns, if you can call them that, with Bradley Beal. And Grayson Allen up there too, maybe a little bit, maybe the big three and a mini four. They're all healthy, and I usually overlook them, especially in a matchup against the Bulls. But Kevin Durant, they run a tight rotation. Kevin Durant playing big minutes, a good matchup, the price starting to come down. And Kevin Durant playing some good basketball right now, coming off probably the best performance of the season so far. Put up 40 raw points against Indy. Maybe he backs that up again tonight with a big performance. I could definitely buy some shares of KD. Everyone else, though, I mean, you could make the same case for Devin Booker, but I think the matchup much better suited for Kevin Durant. On the other side, with no Levine, we go right back to again, it's Kobe White, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic. I mean, those are the main guys. If you trust Patrick Williams, I saw him popping in projections. Not a guy I typically trust. I'm going to be under on him, but again, if you're trusting the projection on a guy like Patrick Williams, you could definitely go for him. I think he's going to get cooked in this matchup. So I don't like to play as much, but they're going to have to play. They're going to have to play in minutes. If not, it's going to be Ayo Dosunmu coming in there with them. They actually did that a few times this season, and that's one reason why I was playing Ayo. This was probably like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And he would sub in. They'd go a little bit smaller, but I don't know what they're going to do. I think Kevin Durant this is going to be such a good spot for him. So again, decent game, not one I want to be extremely overweight on. I think it's more of kind of picking some of the studs here. So it's Kevin Durant for me. maybe Kobe White, run it back with him on the other side, or a DeRozan. But again, I think I'm going to limit it to probably one per each side.
Yeah, I actually missed the Levine news. So I do think my man Kobe White could certainly be in play here, Mangone. What are your thoughts on Chicago and Phoenix?
Yeah, no, the Levine stuff is definitely big, right? Because obviously you have to like some of these other guards, like Kobe White. DeMar DeRozan's usage goes up to 7.4K at the forward position. He's definitely not a bad option here in this spot. So like those guys, keep in mind again, if you decide to play that Embiid and Luka build, then you won't get those guys, right? Those are some of the mid-tier guys that you'll miss out on. Again, it gives you a different build. So you have to hope those guys fail or the other guys just outscore them by a ton. I think Patrick Williams at 4.6, he can be a pivot off of some of those other values that we discussed that I think if we didn't have these values, I think he'd be very high owned, right? Because we wouldn't have value, and that would be one of the guys that we kind of just gravitate towards. So I think that makes some sense there. I don't see myself getting to a Vucevic at the center position. I think there's other centers I'd rather get to. And on the Phoenix side, yeah, Devin Booker always could get there at 9.5 and have a big game. So can Kevin Durant and all these other Suns options. But I think there's other ways I'd rather spend my salary on this slate.
Yeah, that all makes sense. Let's go visit the Philadelphia news. Really the only big piece of news that we've gotten during the show. Now missing Beverly and Springer. Like, AB, this is going to be a super tight rotation. I mean, Philly's got what are they going to play? Like 7, 8 guys at most in this game. We did see Melton and Springer and Beverly out, I think, in their last game or maybe 2 games ago. Tyrese Maxey played, 42 or 43 minutes just because they have nobody else to play point guard. So, yeah, I think you got to bump up Maxey at least a little bit. Any other thoughts on Philadelphia now that we got this news?
Yeah, they're going to be, unless it's like a blowout early on, they're going to be forced to run a really tight rotation. We just saw this against the Hornets. It was Maxey Oubre, Embiid, Harris, and Nicholas Batum starting, and Maxey playing 42 minutes. They ended up winning. It was a fairly close game. But
how did they not score 100? How did Charlotte hold the Sixers under 100 points? I have no idea. But
yeah, I believe LaMelo Ball was out. We saw a slower pace game. Yeah, he was, and I don't know how many possessions were in that game, but I would guess the pace was not very quick. So, I think Tyrese Maxey going to be one of the better plays on the slate. The matchup's really good against the Spurs team. Opposing backcourts just absolutely smash. Again, if it's a blowout, like who's going to factor in here? Daniel House was the guy that got the big rotation last game. He played a healthy amount of minutes off the bench in the first half, and then he closed, obviously, with the lead there. I mean, actually, not obviously. They won by 8 points? But it was interesting seeing Daniel House close over Kelly Oubre Jr. So Kelly Oubre, I don't believe, got in any foul trouble. I'm trying to remember. Maybe chat can tell me if I'm wrong. And he only had 3 fouls. So I think that's interesting. I think maybe he's kind of interesting in this spot. But again, I think the way to play it, just don't assume that there's going to be a blowout. And if you work under that assumption, Maxey has to be the guy. I mean, he has to be a really, really strong play on the slate. 8.8K, a little bit too cheap in my opinion.
Yeah, some really, really low usage from the guys left on Philly. I mean, Oubre's usage has been way down. Batum barely shoots the ball. Even Daniel House is going to play probably some pretty big minutes here. Super, super low usage. So it's going to be, I mean, it always is, but it's going to be a lot of Maxey, Embiid, Tobias Harris. I actually think all 3 guys are good plays. I wouldn't play them together necessarily, though, because I think if they're all going off, pretty unlikely that they see run in the fourth quarter due to blowout. So I do think getting one of the Sixers on your team, pretty good move tonight, though. All right, let's get to the plays of the night. Go ahead.
DC, let me talk about the Philly situation real quick because I have the popcorn up in front of me, and I think it's interesting. So I agree with AP. Like, I think you're going to see aggressive minutes from the Sixers. Now, if the game if the game blows out, okay, sure, you're not going to get the closeout run for the Embiids and the Maxey, but to be fair, some of those guys are already getting there in the blowout, right? They're just having a massive game. Also, I don't really feel good about these bench guys. Like, now there is no Marcus Morris who played 14 minutes last game, but keep in mind he kind of crossed some of the minutes with like House and Korkmaz. And I mean, Paul Reed played 11 minutes. I don't think you see Paul Reed and Embiid cross the court too much together, but
No.
if Popovich somehow has a lineup of Zach Collins and Wemby in there at times, I could see him maybe getting a little crazy and trying it out. I could, just because they're so short-handed. But Kelly Oubre, you could see him play 36 minutes tonight, right? He only played 27 last time. I just would be, if I'm looking at the Sixers projections tonight, the first thing I'm looking at is what is the projection that I use and what are the minutes going to be allocated like, because I might change the projection based on some of the minutes that I'm seeing. If I see someone as Maxey for 36 minutes, I'm going to say that's wrong. I don't think that's correct. And I'm going to readjust it. So I'm not a big believer in a lot of these Sixers bench guys. And I just want to kind of I think, be more aggressive with the Philadelphia starters instead.
I think that's the move. I think you want Maxey, Embiid, Tobias Harris, those three guys, maybe Kelly Oubre as well. I wouldn't mess with the bench guys. They just don't do enough on this team, and I don't think we'll get that many minutes anyway.
Yeah, and let's say Daniel House does play 27 minutes a game. Wow, you got 16 DK points last time. Like,
don't play Daniel House.
That's the point I'm getting at. Like, these guys, one of these guys, you could get the minutes right and still not get the production you want. So I just think there's way more risk to these values, and this is not a slate where we are lacking value. So I think some of these value plays are just, I think they're bad plays right now, especially if they gain ownership.
Yeah, another thing about Maxey, we don't know how the Embiid matchup is going to go with Wembanyama, but it's at least possible Wembanyama does slow him down a little bit with that enormous length. If that's the case, you would assume that it would be Maxey who would pick up, kind of the scoring load there. So I really do like Tyrese Maxey today. He's not going to be my play of the day. He's on the short list. Let's go to UAP. Let's get your gentleman's play of the day to wrap this show up.
I think we might be on the same page with one play that I think might be your play of the day. So I'm gonna give you that, and I'm gonna go Tyrese Maxey since you didn't take it. I love the matchup. I love targeting opposing the Spurs with opposing backcourts. I think Tyrese Maxey bounces back, has a really big game here, and I do think we see multiple pieces from Philly crush. And but I like the take of not like fully stacked. There's a lot of really good spots, and I want to intermix some of these studs, the Dame Lillards, the Tyrese Maxeys, Luka, those guys with a lot of this elite value. So I think it's going to be a slate for me where I just not lock in, but like where I'm like 75, 80% some of these, the Nas, the Kyle Andersons, and then mix and match these studs like Maxey.
Yeah, love it. Love Tyrese Maxey. I'll be riding with AP on that one. And I think you did know my play of the day. So I'll go next here. Rudy Gobert is the mom's. Did you have it right? I think you did.
Yeah. I had to leave that for you. Love the play. Love it.
Yeah, Charlotte just has no big men left. It really is as simple as that. They're the worst rebounding team in the league at the moment, in my opinion. Gobert playing really well, gobbling up rebounds, and actually leads the league, I believe, in dunks on the year and getting a little bit more involved in the offense, especially when he's got good matchups. I just think he absolutely smashes here. And last time the Wolves blew a team out was against Portland. So Gobert was limited to 28 minutes, still put up 50 fantasy points in 3 quarters in that one. I think you'll see 50 plus out of the big man, Rudy Gobert, tonight. Let's go to you, Mangone, your play of the day.
Yeah, I was wondering if I had a chance to steal yours, but I wouldn't have stolen it. So last time we were out, I did steal RJ Barrett, and he did pretty good. So I'm still looking to get on a streak of stealing your plays, but I was not going to say your guy, DC. I have someone different. I like Emmanuel quickly. I'm going to go back to the well on him. And I don't know. I'm seeing lower ownership. Maybe he's higher than I think, but I just think in general he's going to get overlooked. So it'll still be like 15 to 20%, but that's fine with me. Emmanuel quickly, he'll be my guy.
Love it. Tyrese Maxey, quickly, Rudy Gobert. Love all 3 plays. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you guys at the top of the standings with our plays of the day. Hopefully some of you listeners are up there with us. A lot of RPS logos up top lately, and I think we'll see more of that tonight. If you do want to join the winner circle over at Run Pure Sports, you can use promo code NEWYEAR for 15% off your first weekly or monthly payment. That'll do it for the show. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks for watching as always. And for AP, for Mangone, I'm DC, and we're out of here.